Okay, it looks like we're live here. We are doing the Exosphere Hangout for Bitcoin and the Future of Money. I am joined with Quinn Harris and Gabriel Scheare. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So just so our audience and our viewers can get a little insight on you guys so they know where you're coming from. Quinn, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in Bitcoin.
I've been very interested in computers for quite a long time. I have quite a bit of experience in software development, and for quite a few years, interest in economics, bit of an Austrian bent. A few years ago, I kind of, realized that there's something like a cryptocurrency would be very advantageous. Mostly because of a huge amount of manipulation by central banks and other things, and basically, I would say kind of the lack of integrity of existing monetary systems. But it wasn't really until more recently, about the big run-up in price a year and a half ago, that I really realized that Bitcoin was viable, both in terms of taking real value. Because it really did start from nothing. It kind of, I'd say, bootstrapped on warm fuzzies, and the potential that it offered. So I kind of was under the belief that you had to start with something like gold, and I was clearly mistaken on that. So after that, I put the time into just at least understanding how that system worked. When I first saw it, I thought it had some technical issues, and I still think it does, but they weren't as significant as I thought they would be in practice. So yeah, I'm more interested in the technical aspect and then the future technology offers, especially to provide integrity to financial markets.
Perfect. And what about you, Gabriel?
I don't come from a technical background. I'm not a coder, I'm not a programmer, or I'm not an engineer. But since I was a kid, really, I was really interested in how money works, how the state finances everything that it does. And this whole concept of fractional reserve banking just got under my skin and drove me nuts. Like, since World War I, they've been able to just print infinite money out of thin air whenever they want to finance all kinds of crazy crap. And when I first heard about Bitcoin, it struck me as a way that ability could just vaporize completely. Because if they don't have the ability to print money out of thin air, then the only way that they can raise funds to do anything is by taxing people. And if they actually had to raise tax money to the tune of how many trillions of dollars they've spent bombing people overseas, the people just can't sustain that. They don't have that money to give. So these foreign wars wouldn't even be possible. And that's just the very tip of the iceberg. So just the concept struck me as being something that has to happen somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got into Bitcoin in 2011. Had no idea what it was or why I even needed it. Was given Bitcoin, completely forgot of it, moved out of the country, moved to Costa Rica, ended up getting all of my Bitcoin hacked with the InstaWallet hack. And realized that I had held something that somebody would want. And that's when I really started looking into Bitcoin. So since then, my entire life has changed. I wasn't that interested in the Federal Reserve or where money came from. I really wasn't interested in finance at all. But since Bitcoin has now basically taken over my life, pretty much every single aspect of finance and tech is fascinating to me now. And I think that's a trend that we'll start to see, as people that didn't really have a huge interest in this before will now have an interest because there's a better solution for what we've been doing. So I think that's a good start. So why do you guys kind of shared with your background, why do you currently have passion for Bitcoin? Why do you care about Bitcoin? What is your why with Bitcoin? Quinn?
Little one I touched on, but I mean, I guess much like Gabe said, I think it is the start of what has the potential to replace our existing financial system with one that has integrity, and in the sense that each participant is able to verify the rules, and the rules are objective. And I mean, that's even the thing with Bitcoin, is when you receive Bitcoins, especially if you're running the full software, you're checking all the rules, and it just happens automatically, where that's never really been possible before. I kind of like to say, if somebody gives you a gold coin, do you know that that's gold? Do you know what the purity of that is? It's actually very expensive to know that. With Bitcoin, you run the software, and it happens. You don't have to know how the rules apply, but you can yourself basically do like a full assay of a Bitcoin, or right there. But it has a lot more potential for all financial instruments. And then there's other related technologies for just about anything where you want to attest to something. You want to say, oh, does this person actually transfer me real Bitcoins, or is this person, or I mean, even kind of a thing, is this person who they claim they are? And there's a lot of these cryptographic technologies that can be used to do these types of things. And I see really kind of getting to the point where over time you can replace a lot of things people think of as being the state, a state, with a better form of governance. And so, yeah, it is a kind of thing that in time will change the world for the better, at least as I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything he said.
Ditto. For me, I think there's so many parts of Bitcoin that I really love, but I think for like a beginner basic part is to realize that you can send value peer-to-peer without anybody taking a cut of it. And that was something that I really wrapped my head around quickly, because I have friends internationally. I have friends all over the world. And I thought, how cool is it to be able to send them Bitcoin instantly without a government or without a payment processor taking a cut of it and putting their dirty hands in all of the money that I have. I think that's a really great start for Bitcoin. Is you don't have to know the tech behind it. You don't have to know everything about Bitcoin. I think the first step is realizing that instantly, right now, I could send any person Bitcoin in the world, even if they don't have a smartphone. I think that there's technologies up and coming for SMS, and I think that's the real nab for Bitcoin, is that you can exchange value instantly peer-to-peer. So I think that's my why.
That's what first struck me, is that if I want to send a letter to my grandma, I can send it to her through the post, or I can send her an email. Why can't I send an email with cash in it? You know, like
you can now.
No, you can, exactly.
It makes it the best birthday cards in the world, right? It's not just an email full of fluff. You can actually give them value.
Yeah.
So I guess touching on social implications of Bitcoin, where do you guys see Bitcoin changing the world? What markets do you see Bitcoin changing, and what type of lives do you see Bitcoin able to facilitate to make it better? Gabriel?
All of them.
Yes.
I've seen a kid selling lemonade and accepting Bitcoin. So, all of them, bar none.
Absolutely.
There is not one market that won't be changed by this.
I mean, to me, you know, Bitcoin's it's a start. I guess I always look at it. It's the start to, I would say, completely replacing everything in the existing financial world. Of course, that'll take a lot longer. Hopefully, I'll be alive to see the end of it. But I mean, I always find that technology takes a lot longer to develop when you're actually living it. It's much easier to think of the ideas and say this would be great than it is to actually get it working properly. And even when it becomes obvious to have an idea, it's still, at least from my perspective, always seems to be arduous, takes forever kind of thing. And I mean, I don't think most people recognize how profound finance affects them. I mean, or they probably do to some degree, but I expect it's to a much greater degree than most people realize. And I think that through this type of technology, I can get the results that I want without actually having to convince people of something. I want a better, like, say, financial market. I don't have to convince them that we need one. It's more like build it, and they'll end up using it out of their own self-interest. So it's kind of about appealing to people's self-interest to, in some sense, achieve political ends that I would want to achieve. And doing it through political means is, at least for myself, not very effective.
You touched on something there, and it's that this change is inspiring people to actually take an interest in finance. Over the last year, 2 years, as Bitcoin was really starting to take off in Vancouver, that's the one thing that really got me excited, was seeing all these new people coming in, playing with this new toy, going, wow, I've never even thought about the old toy before because I just grew up with it. And then they started asking questions about how the old stuff works. Wait a minute, why was it like that? Was I using it like that the whole time?
Is it really that dirty?
Exactly. I put that in my mouth. Yeah. But as soon as they start to figure out how the old model worked, then they start taking an interest in all the other subjects that we enjoy.
Yeah, I think the educational piece is huge. Even if the user doesn't go past what it is and how it works, just simply letting the world know that there's a choice. I think that's where the social implication really starts to step in. Is up until now, the world, or up until 2009 when Satoshi put the white paper out, there wasn't. I mean, there was other avenues of trying, e-golds and everything like that, but there wasn't a great decentralized avenue for this, and just this simple idea that there is an option to opt out or even choose to kind of participate and dabble and check it out. I think the social implications globally are just really starting. Meeting Ala Kalani from Africa and watching what she's doing in her local villages to get Bitcoin starting on remittance markets, and just the general exchange of value. I think that there's no end to the way that this is going to change. It's simply the beginning, so it's very, very exciting.
And it's really great to see all of the new counterparts that are springing up around it, all of the alternative currencies. People are taking an interest in presenting alternatives and testing them out and comparing them to each other. Absolutely.
I think when innovation hits in a free market, you're not going to be able to stop it, nor would you want to. I think that's something that Bitcoin truly has started, is that it allows people to test ideas, try new innovative ways to transfer wealth or new ways to create communities. And I think that's really important. I think a lot of people have been apathetic about money and overly down on the control of money, simply because they didn't even know that they were being controlled. When you give people the option to participate in a community where their participation in the network, their node on the network, is just as important as everyone else's, I think it really does allow people to start thinking freely. They can start to think, hey, if I build a business or if I do this, I can actually participate and help others. And I think it's going to it's starting now like a wildfire. But I think as adoption goes, especially educated adoption, we're going to see huge amounts of change within the mental psyche of people, that they'll really realize that we can have a free market through this. It's very exciting. So let's talk about maybe the other side, exchanges. Exchanges are more centrally controlled. They allow for greater access to Bitcoin, especially to new users. What do you guys think about exchange reliability?
Quinn, what do you think about exchange reliability?
So, I mean, I guess it starts with, well, I don't know, we probably maybe don't all know the Gox thing. A lot of people lost a lot of Bitcoin because of an unreliable exchange. Basically, exchange didn't operate as they should. They broke promises. it sucked. But the question is, will that happen in the future, and is there a way to fix it? There are already technical things to fix. I guess it's a very immature market, and really at this point, it's a bit of an issue. But I think in the long run, at least one of the things that encouraged me about Bitcoin, or the technology will eventually advance where it'll actually be unequivocally superior to anything that exists before. I think in order to achieve that, realistically, we start to have to get other currencies on similar type of things to Bitcoin. And instead of having exchanges that are centralized, it really becomes a decentralized exchange, operating in somewhat similar methods. So you can hold, I mean, anytime, you know, I would think that you're going to end up, in some sense, like holding dollars. If you were still having an exchange, you might hold kind of a Bitcoin equivalent of dollars that are backed by possibly some party. There's other ways of doing it where they can be it's kind of its own little fiat currency that's adjusted by other participants in the market. But there's the possibility of basically having other currencies in a Bitcoin system and then exchanging in a distributed way. That's kind of the long-term thing, but like I said, it'll probably take many years before that's really realized. There's definitely many attempts actually achieving those things that are competing. Stuff like Mastercoin that rides on top of Bitcoin, is Ethereum, which is kind of its own system, Ripple, and so I mean I guess we'll see if anybody succeeds. And it's not very clear, I guess, at this point which one will be the winner. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a big concern, and one of the big problems is I think it makes at least some people think, oh, Bitcoin's unreliable, and then of course you even get people thinking that Bitcoin crashed. There's a lot. I actually had even somebody say that. It's like, I guess Bitcoin went bankrupt or some kind of thing like this, which isn't the case. It's just again one party. So I mean, there are technical solutions. It'll take a little bit of time. But I think in the end, 20 years from now, they'll look at the existing system of, oh wait, an individual can't verify everything easily. It isn't just happening automatically. That's so arcane. So yeah.
What about you, Gabriel?
I'm definitely on the same page. I kind of come from the position where I'm not too worried about how well any one of them does or how well any of them do. As long as they're free to compete with each other, the best will, in the end, win out. I mean, free competition has its way of sorting through all of the crap, so you just have to sit back and wait.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I by nature like the peer-to-peer exchange, so I love meeting new friends at Bitcoin meetings or just on the street, even selling my girlfriends small amounts of Bitcoin to get them started. I wouldn't send some of my friends off into an exchange just to go to buy Bitcoin for their first time. I think that, like you said, with a free market, they're all welcome, and whoever comes out on top will be shortly taken down by the next person that innovates quicker than them. And I think that's a really great thing to remember here. I remember when Gox went down, I had so many people asking me, oh, I heard that your thing that you're really into had died, and it was such a beautiful time. I know that there was so much there was a lot of sadness. A couple of my friends lost a lot of money, but I always kind of look at it and think these are really great opportunities to have the public ask the questions that they wouldn't normally ask, like, did Bitcoin die? And now you have the opportunity to say, actually, we're doing really great, and it's a free market. It was just one single company that had some executive incompetence or other things that happen, and we're actually doing well now. And it also gives you the opportunity to let them know that you don't have to purchase Bitcoin through an exchange. You can buy it online through local Bitcoins, or you can go to a local Bitcoin meeting. And a lot of times you don't even have to buy Bitcoin. You can earn Bitcoin. So I think it allows people to look at it from a different side. So exchange reliability will always be up and down. The most reliable source is yourself and somebody that you trust, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of these lessons were costly, but they were also very valuable.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, some people. There's also a lot of people advocating that we need more regulation, government regulation. I need to clarify. I mean, I get a little frustrated when you call it regulation, because that word means to make regular, and government regulation in many cases does almost the opposite. But the point is that when you suffer this pain, there's this incentive to respond, to react. There's a lot more people are now concerned because of the GOX thing. Are the exchanges doing things to prove their solvency? And a few of them have responded and tried to prove that solvency. I don't think at this point any solutions are really good in practice. I think there's still quite a bit lacking. We might end up going through a few more of these before everything gets fixed up. But it's these pain that's the incentive to improve the system and to figure out where it needs to be improved. So, yeah. And I guess the other things, it's kind of pain to acquire Bitcoin. I hope most people start recognizing it's mostly because of government regulations, like at least in the United States. It's very difficult. I mean, all the stuff that a company has to go through, like to be able to transfer money to a Bitcoin exchange, I think is very significant. If it wasn't very significant, I know that there'd be a lot more than. I mean, I really only know of. I only know of one exchange that you can pull. I mean, it's not even an exchange that you can pull money directly out of a U.S. bank account. I mean, like Coinsetter won't even. They'll let you there's an example. They'll let you trade on their thing, but they don't want to take your dollars at this point. So yeah, I mean, these regulations are largely what makes it so difficult. It's not inherent to what Bitcoin is.
Yep, absolutely. I think. It gives people an option to either choose to go to the archaic ways of giving their money to somebody else and having a centralized control, a centralized currency exchange, or going the opposite way of peer-to-peer. And I think that those solutions will quickly be taken care of in many parts of the world. There'll be quick, decentralized ways to do this. I wouldn't see that happening quickly in the United States. I live in the United States, and I know it's a risky business to be starting Bitcoin businesses here. It's a volatile world. I would say far more volatile than Bitcoin.
Yeah, these technical lessons were sort of learned by the file sharing systems. When Napster first came online, everything was centralized. They had their servers, they had their company, and it was easy to shut that down. And then the torrents came along and decentralized everything, peer-to-peer. And money has to follow that same pattern. That's the only way that it can work.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's chat about scalability of Bitcoin. I know that we've got quite a few people that are very interested in probably the hard problems in cryptocurrency. Maybe, Quinn, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you think about scalability concerns?
As it exists now, it's not scalable. And by scale, I mean the ultimate scalability is everybody's using Bitcoin or some kind of equivalent for every financial transaction. That's a long way through where we are now. The current system as it exists cannot support that. Just a simple thing, if you, in order to fully, validate a Bitcoin, you have to currently run the Bitcoin core. It's a reference client, or the Bitcoin core is what they call it now, and it downloads the entire blockchain, and it's currently 20 gigabytes, and it takes a long time. So a lot of people don't want to do that. There's actually been a reduction number of nodes recently, probably because people don't want to do that. There's improvements where hopefully instead of having to download the whole blockchain, it'll only be transactions that are relevant. So the blockchain consists of pretty much every transaction. So every time you transfer money from one person to another, it creates a transaction. It's all recorded basically in perpetuity. In order to run the system, all that's relevant are transactions that have not been spent, unspent transactions. And that said, I understand it's much smaller. It's instead of 20 gigabytes, it's probably less than half a gigabyte. But the technology is not quite in place to be able to just deal with the unspent transactions in a secure way. hopefully that will change, and that would help a bit. There's also a hard-coded limit, works out to about 7 transactions per second, that, at least as the software exists today, once you exceed that, it literally will not accept that many more transactions. And it's actually not, it's the total number of data that transactions take up, not the actual total number of transactions. So, I mean, there's known hard-coded limits that would make it unable to process large transaction volumes without changing them. And then the other thing is every transaction, every node in the system handles every single transaction. And I think that in the end that condition has to be changed, where you can break it and you only handle parts of transactions, especially once you get into handling stocks, bonds, other kind of financial instruments. It's, you shouldn't have to handle literally every single thing on the system if you want to participate in a node. That will actually create this effect where only people with a lot of resources will be able to run nodes. And so there's definitely solutions to address these. I wouldn't say perfect solutions, but definitely some ideas. Many things, like even just doing the unspent transaction outputs, I think there's been significant progress on. But those problems need to be solved before we can see Bitcoin and similar types of technology really becoming really widespread.
And any take on it, Gabriel?
Nope. Quinn's the genius when it comes to that stuff.
yeah, I think we'll opt out of that one as well.
Yeah.
So I think exactly. Since we're kind of touching on the last time before we start answering questions, and it looks like we've got some really great questions, why don't we start talking about catalysts for the next big price shift? So let's talk about that. What do you guys think about where the price is now and where it'll go? What do you think, Gabriel?
Well, generally what seems to drive the price right now is fear, whether that comes from a central bank of a country, whether China or the Federal Reserve saying we're going to outlaw it or we're going to cause problems with how people use it. That scares people away, so the price drops. And whenever some big player like Dish Network or Expedia signs on and says we're going to accept Bitcoin, or if some central banker says that they're going to reverse their policy and say that it's okay, that drives the price back up. So we have a lot of speculators jumping in and jumping out. That's where we get this volatility. But it looks like the trend right now is quite favorable. There's a lot of big players coming on board right now, and the price is on a climb. So that's going to get a lot more people interested for the next while here.
And what's your take, Quinn?
My biggest hope is just that it becomes less volatile over time, and I think it largely has. Even though it's gone from 1,200 to about 350. If you actually look back in last year when I started to become interested, it moved pretty much that much in one day. And this time, it's taken a few months to do it, and it isn't even quite as much. So if you look at it, always look at a log chart, by the way. It'll make if you use a linear chart, it'll make the current prices seem much worse. But really what you care about is the percent increase. Is it doubled? So just if you're looking at the charts, look at a log chart, and you'll probably see kind of what I was talking about, that the price actually is swinging less today than it has in the past. And really, I think as you get more volume, the volatility should go down. Realistically, people right now are mostly using Bitcoin, I think, for speculation. They're definitely using it for money. Or as a medium of exchange, but I think at this point probably a lot of it is speculation. Hopefully over time that will go away. If it doesn't ever, it's failed. If it doesn't become more of a currency instead of just a kind of risky asset, it would be unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that the catalysts for big price shifts are always, like you said, fear-based. I agree with that. Or really big cheerleading for the ecosystem. But I think it's interesting because I've heard so many people say, I heard Bitcoin crashed. And I love to know that every time Bitcoin crashes, it crashes up. And that's something that's very, very cool. We are so much further than we were last year as far as technological advances, community. These are things that no matter what the Bitcoin price is, it's far more stable than last year. We've got better technology, we've got better communities. And I was talking to Andreas Antonopoulos in, I think it was Toronto, and we started talking about if we really want to start thinking about Bitcoin, stop putting it in context to fiat. Currencies. So I know that's very hard for all of us to do since we live in a fiat system and government-regulated money, but my Bitcoin amount doesn't change unless I spend it or receive it. And that's kind of a nice thing to think about on those days that maybe it's extra volatile or extra fear is instilled into the market, is that we still have the entity that we had yesterday. It hasn't changed, just our ideas of it does. So that's something that I think is really important. And we just got a question in that's a part of this. So the question is what do you see the price of Bitcoin being in the next year or so? And is it even relevant? So let's speculate a bit, guys.
In 1 year?
Yep, in 1 year.
I'll take a leap and say 1,500. And no, it doesn't really matter.
What do you think, Quinn?
Yeah, I think 15 might be a little pessimistic, actually.
Maybe.
But I would be more confident saying it'll pass 1,500. Doesn't mean it'll stay there, but it'll at least get to that point.
1,600.
Based on the behavior in the past, if it happened in 3 months, I would not be shocked. I wouldn't be surprised at all, actually. I wouldn't say it's most likely, but I would not bet against that by any means. I would actually prefer it level out a bit. I mean, to be more stable for a while. But I also expect, I kind of didn't answer it too well about the price going up. I think major financial problems in the existing markets that are related to trust in the currency, which I think are reasonably likely in the next few years, could cause another run-up. I mean, I think the run-up last year was correlated with the Cyprus incident. I assume there's some causal relation. I'm not certain how much. And that was very much bringing into question the trust of the financial system. So my guess is the next big run-up, like I guess we have this, there's actually been, I guess, 3 as I would see it. The next one I would guess is going to be related to a major fear with the existing financial system.
And also, there are a few big players like eBay and Amazon and whatnot who have been throwing around the ideas that they might embrace it fully soon, and Apple. And if they all do that at once, then obviously that's going to drive the price up too.
Yeah, I definitely think that, well, I mean, in speculation of next year, who really knows? But I have friends that are certain that it'll be $10,000 per Bitcoin by September, and I'm like, okay, that sounds great, let's do it. But I always try to think of what type of things really do make these volatility swings happen. And one of my good friends just asked a question, so I think this is really great with within this conversation. My friend asks, will you ever see bank news such as GDP data releases that will make major impacts on Bitcoin? What do you guys think about that?
Take it away, Quinn.
My first response is I hope not. But I guess it's more of an economics question of what I mean, in fact, the bigger Bitcoin becomes, the less volatile it should become. It's a currency. And one of the primary purposes, it's supposed to be a medium of exchange and a way of doing financial calculation. And as it exists today, it's not honestly an effective tool for financial calculation. That means the business can actually do profit losses, and that actually correlates to, in some sense, real resources. Are you actually prudently using real resources if you're making a profit or not? But Bitcoin, if you calculated your finances, it has more to do with what the market's done than what you're doing. So my hope is if it gets, the bigger it gets, again, the more stable it gets. So I would say probably not. Well, going back to the fear issue, if there's a major thing with GDP, like GDP hasn't performed as well, it might help Bitcoin, but I think it'll mostly just be integrity of the existing financial system, overt things, which GDP is not quite that. It's more like hyperinflation, or they're going to take your money, or bank failures, these kind of things.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's move on to another question. We talked a little bit about other cryptocurrencies and other communities within the Bitcoin space. So the question here from Patrick is, do you believe Bitcoin will be the cryptocurrency, or will it be replaced by a number of different cryptocurrencies?
It'll probably hang on for quite a while, and there's a lot of people that will probably continue to use it for quite some time, but there are a lot of very interesting competitors coming on the scene right now that do offer value. So I don't think it's going to hold the top spot forever. I think, you have to be open to anytime something better comes along, check it out, and if it is superior, get with it.
The existing system, the existing code used today, I do not think and hope it won't be used 10 to 20 years from now. That doesn't mean it's not possible that, for example, an alt-currency comes along, proves technologically superior, and the value is actually transferred to it. In most cases, this should be technically possible. Having fewer currencies, having just one unit of account is actually economically prudent, as I see. So I'm hoping actually that Bitcoin, in terms of its value, will probably be the one. The number of units you have doesn't matter as long as they're divisible. The generation, you could say how rapidly Bitcoins are created might be an issue. It's very hard to figure out what the right answer to that question is. But I guess I do see it. There will be significant improvements in technology. The question is whether the Bitcoin values that exist today will be able to keep following through those technological improvements, and I think that's possible, quite plausible.
Yeah, I think this is the most interesting time. I mean, so far, obviously, there's been some really amazing price changes in the past few years, but within other communities, I always try to look at what are the highlightable attributes of each community or each cryptocurrency. And that's something that I see as being a really great thing in cryptocurrencies, just simply because it doesn't really matter how somebody's introduced into the idea that you can have a peer-to-peer payment system. It's just that they are introduced into it. So I have a lot of friends that really like the community of Dogecoin. I myself am a very big Bitcoin fan, but I'm also very interested in Darkcoin. I think that specific communities will align with the properties that each coin holds, and I think that really starts to create the free market where you can choose what currency you participate in and which utility that coin has. As of right now, Bitcoin has the greatest utility, but it doesn't always have to be that way. I also do see that a lot of these other cryptocurrencies or different spaces, Ripple and Ethereum, are really great areas for testing out ideas. When they either prove to be successful or not successful, the main developers of Bitcoin can possibly implement them into the core development for Bitcoin. So I think it really does create people to believe in the free market and not be stuck to one specific entity of Bitcoin. They can really start to say, I want to create this community, and this is the value of our coin specific to the ideas that the coin has, whether it be for security or confidentiality, privacy, or a social tipping app. Those are all really great things that are brought into this space. So who knows which one will come out on top, but that's the nice part about the free market. So since both of you guys are down in Chile, there's been a couple questions about Chile. One was, how is Bitcoin perceived and doing in Chile? And the other is for you, Gabe, of if you liked Gulch, Chile, and if you could see it being a potential Bitcoin-based community. So let us know what you guys think about Chile.
So Chile has not embraced Bitcoin in any way, shape, or form yet. They're very leery to entertain ideas brought in from foreigners that are new and scary, perhaps. So it's going to take a while to ease them into it and bring the tech in, set up some ATMs, basically do the same thing that we did in Vancouver, get local businesses to accept it one by one and get the buzz going. It's just a down-on-the-ground campaign that takes time. As for Gulch, I'm actually moving in there in a couple of weeks, and it's still very young. The central area where the clubhouse and offices and things like that are very nice, but no one from outside has started to build their houses yet. There's been a lot of land sold and a lot of people with plans, but it's going to take a long time for things to actually start coming together to where it looks like a town. In time, though, yeah, sure, it could absolutely become a Bitcoin town. They do pay their staff in Bitcoin if they want it, but it's really early.
Perfect. So we're out of questions, so if you guys have any questions, please shoot them over. We'd love to answer them. Anything that you've got, let's hear them. Let's see.
Clarification on another thing I said. I mean, I definitely want the system to get to the point where anybody can create their own notes. So you can create your own currency, you can set your own rules. I think it's a little bit of an Ethereum idea. I think Ethereum has some good things. I think they don't really address scalability issues that I've kind of talked about before. That doesn't mean it's not worth the time and effort, and hopefully they prove that maybe their more flexible approach is there, but it's going to require, in my mind, other significant improvements in terms of scalability that could apply both to Ethereum and Bitcoin and other types of cryptocurrencies. But yeah, I mean, I always, even before I even knew about Bitcoin, I wanted something where anybody can create their own notes, be it a coupon, be it a stock, bond, a currency that you use in your town, whatever it might be. But in practical economic case, I expect you're going to have one currency. I mean, really, it's the dollar today, unfortunately, in some regards, but that becomes just widely used. And I expect you'll end up seeing that same thing, where if there's success of cryptocurrency, it'll primarily be one that's used predominantly. But it's very important that people always have the ability to introduce something else. Even that ability, even if it's never used itself, can be a bit of a check. Because in the end, there's still people defining the system, the rules of the system. There always will be. There's still software that runs it. And there will be rule changes. Most of them will just be technical improvements. But there's there can be big debates over rule changes on Bitcoin. Even the technical issues can be, what do we do here? So it's never, we always need a market in this sense, and it's always there's always a possibility that there is a fork or a split. And then there's always a possibility there's a major technical problem with Bitcoin that's catastrophic, breaking some of the cryptography, these kinds of things, which could destroy it potentially very rapidly. It has a certain kind of, I'm a little bit concerned over the cryptography in the sense that somebody might discover something, or the case is somebody is able to produce quantum computers theoretically at a reasonable price, and that would break most of the cryptography of Bitcoin. If it happens very quickly, this could be a very big problem. If it happens in a slow progression, it could probably be adapted before it becomes a big problem. But there's possibility of major technical issues.
Okay, so we got a couple other questions. Let's see here. What are your takes on under development altcoins? And do you think you'll be able? Do you think we'll keep seeing faulty and shady coins more often, or will they slowly diminish?
as I said before, all competition is good competition. But yes, we will always see these pointless, shady altcoins that pop up for no apparent reason. Just as this, it's just like you and I can start a chain letter or a Ponzi scheme or something like that to try to make a quick buck. That's always possible.
Yeah, I think this can get worse in the short term because Bitcoin will become more popular, and then people just let me try start my own coin and whatever. Hopefully, in the long term, Bitcoin will eventually become a currency, so it won't see this great speculative thing, and then actually you'll get better technology that anybody can generate their own coins, so it also becomes inundated with anybody can do it. So I think some other factors in the long term will actually reduce, at least in terms of percentage of the cryptocurrency world, how much of these hokey altcoins that you're seeing. Even though being that it's going to become much bigger in terms of absolute sense, it might never get smaller.
Yeah, absolutely. So another question is, what do you think of Argentina? According to today's article in The Economist saying that Argentina was a haven for Bitcoin. I wanted to start that one off because I'm very interested in Argentina, as well as Brazil and Venezuela. I think that countries that are highly knowledgeable that their government is corrupt and constantly manipulating the currency will quickly catch on to cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin, because it gives them an ease of transaction. Bitcoin is far more wanted than the Argentinian, I think it's the peso, I'm not sure is that right? So I think that we'll see huge movements in Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela. Venezuela is a little bit more slowly since of the violence and the lack of internet in most places. But I think Argentina is definitely going to be a haven for Bitcoin, for sure.
Yeah, they have every reason to embrace it right now. You're not even allowed to buy dollars or foreign currencies there right now. The state is trying to contain the situation that they've created and are feeding, but there's really no way to stop it. I mean, you can pass laws to make it difficult for bricks and mortar businesses to deal with Bitcoin, but that's about it. A lot of people are buying them right now. It's not really easy. You do have to meet people in person to do it.
Yep.
But over the next year or so, I'm sure it'll get a lot easier for them.
Absolutely, and there's meetups going on in Argentina. I know Rodolfo's got meetups going on. There's areas for Argentinians to go and learn about Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, trade Bitcoin. It's starting quickly, and I think it'll continue to go like wildfire. So. Let's see here. Another kind of off the side is what is the coolest Ethereum project that you know about?
I did the last one.
Unfortunately, my knowledge of Ethereum is not much more than not a complete read of their white paper. So I'm more of the technical thing. So I don't know much about the Ethereum community, so I can't really, I think, intelligently comment on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in principle, a lot of the things that they're playing with right now are really promising, I think. I don't know much about the technical side. Again, I'm not a programmer, a coder, or anything, but the principles that they're dealing with are really exciting. Systems for removing trust from transactions, removing the need for patents, copyrights, things like that, because the blockchain can store information forever that people can check on when it was stored, things like that. Smart contracts, for instance, to enforce deals between people. The list goes on, but it's definitely something that we're going to have to keep a close eye on.
Yeah, I think within the Ethereum project, I've been kind of watching it. I go to the meetings sometimes and seen Vitalik speak on it. I watched a marriage contract built on Ethereum, and I don't believe in marriage. I don't believe that the state should have anything to do with who I love or how long I love them. But it was an interesting project to watch happen, and how they built it, how Ether was the binding contract, and the man or the woman, or the man and the man, or the woman, or 10 people. I don't know how many people you could have on a marriage contract in Ethereum. Probably any amount, actually. It was actually very cool to watch how if the contract was broken, the Ether would be split, or setting limits of spending per day of the Ether. It was a very cool thing to watch, just simply because marriage is something that definitely needs to be overthrown and redone in the system. So it was cool to watch that. I don't know a whole lot more about Ethereum than a couple of the contracts that I've been watching, but they're very cool to see being made.
Just, I mean, it might be kind of obvious, but all Ethereum can do, or any system can follow a set of rules. Like going to a marriage contract, somebody has to define if it's broken. It has to have some kind of input into the system. Sometimes the input's just time. Like you said, you can put out a certain amount per unit time. That's a pretty solid thing. But there's a whole, I think, world of businesses, real world things, real world people that has to be around this. So, you know, the system executes the rules, but who defines the rules? And in many cases, where are the inputs coming from? Because, you know, most contracts are usually predicated on some kind of thing. Even doing, you know, things predicated on like a price, like what's the dollar price of Bitcoin, it's actually very tricky. You have to end up having some authority that defines the price, because the price isn't, I mean, we might think, oh, there's a certain price, but it's really whatever the last trade was on a given exchange. It's not necessarily a straightforward thing. And then, you know, the other big thing I think is identity is a very important aspect. I mean, first in the sense of, do you have the right to spend these Bitcoins? And you know, in this case, it's, do you have these private keys, these numbers? And I think there's a lot of development beyond blockchains or Ethereum or any kind of thing that needs to go into making it usable and easy for people to prove their identity, to attest to some kind of thing like they haven't committed crimes. I think this can be done in not necessarily with the use of a blockchain, but this kind of longer term kind of thing is you would end up having organizations that could attest. I mean, let's take the example of credit rating. They largely do the same kind of thing today. Is, you know, are you a credit-worthy individual? So, you know, a system that's very decentralized, where, you know, it's very easy for somebody to do that, but it does take a lot of time and effort to actually gain credibility in a market. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity for businesses that gain credibility over time in a market, even though they're using technology that is available to everybody. They can still have a huge advantage just because that credibility they gain. But at the same time, in a real market, it's much easier, much more expensive and difficult to gain credibility than it is to lose it. And that risk of loss, I think, would keep at least private organizations doing all kinds of certifications, like stocks. Is the stock is something, you know, I think like an SEC can be replaced through private organizations, because if they mess up, they actually lose money. Versus probably, you know, like government, they always get more money when they mess up. But yeah, there's more necessary technology, I think, than what you'd see in like Ethereum. So a lot of the promises, I think, to be realized, it's just part of the picture, sure, both in terms of technology and businesses and organizations and institutions around it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we're coming up on an hour, and I wanted to ask a specific question to you guys, and it's interesting. One of my friends just asked a question that was correlating with what I was going to ask. So his question is, how do we get more women interested in Bitcoin? But I think more importantly is, how do we get more people involved in Bitcoin? So I would like to start that, since it was directly gone to women, and or directly posed to women. I've been working on this in my mind a lot, because I'm asked, why aren't there women in Bitcoin, or why aren't women in Bitcoin interested in, you know, interested in it more? So I've decided that there's a really great way to ruin the ratio, right? Right now, most men have Bitcoin. There are many, many amazing, intelligent, hardworking women that have Bitcoin and are interested in Bitcoin, but there's still a ratio of more men own Bitcoin than women. So I was thinking, if every single man that owned Bitcoin would give their mother or their sister Bitcoin, we would be equal. We would have 50% women owning Bitcoin, and we would have 50% men owning Bitcoin. Then we can start talking about how to get them more interested. I think the first step of getting anybody interested in Bitcoin is giving them a little bit or having them buy a little bit and showing them the utility of it. So on my daily basis, I set people up with wallets, mostly women, because I'm very active in the space of getting women involved in Bitcoin. But I love setting people up with wallets, showing them how to use it, why to use it. If they're not interested in the social implications of Bitcoin, I show them the utility of it, how they can spend it on overstock.com or they can buy things online. I think that those are two really, really great ways to get people started on Bitcoin. What do you guys do in your daily base life to get people interested in Bitcoin?
I just don't shut up about it.
None of us do.
Yeah, there's the. Oh, sorry, go. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna go over, like, there's the Bitcoin co-op in Vancouver that I was associating with for about a year when I lived there, and just on the ground a campaign of going like door to door to businesses. One method that really works well there is a friend of mine. He heads up a lot of meetup groups that have pretty high numbers, and he goes to restaurants and things like that and says, I'll bring my massive meetup group here if you accept Bitcoin.
Yep.
It works great. So
yes.
Just stuff like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's always advocating it, and then there's making it better. So, you know, Bitcoin didn't exist at one time, and now it does. So you have something, and it just improving, making it better and better indefinitely. To the point, I mean, large scale, I think in most people's mind it has to be unequivocally superior to what exists. It's not today. It can be. But, I mean, luckily, I think people's, well, I would say luckily, it's actually a very unfortunate thing, but I think people's perception of existing monies is going to get worse. So that will work a little bit in the favor, but I think there's a lot of improvement to be made, and in the end, trying to advocate it based on principles or ideas will work with some people, but you will never get widespread acceptance on ideas. It has to be, frankly, really pragmatic. It has to be just, it benefits you. It's that simple, and they can see it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Definitely. So adoption and educated adoption, why it benefits people to use it, and what it's replacing, what the current system has done to the world, what it does to individual people, and what it does for innovation. Stifling innovation, I think, is something that governments do best. So I think that's a huge plus for cryptocurrencies, is to allow innovation to happen quickly. So let's finish up with one more question. It's a pointed question. So it's, can I begin placing Bitcoin ATMs in locations in California yet? I'd like to get a deal with a franchise like Starbucks.
Yes.
Yes. Well, you'd probably be competing with the Starbucks bucks, right?
Oh yeah, I mean,
that's like the most profitable part of Starbucks, is the unredeemed Starbucks bucks.
well, no, the question was, can I place it in California? Technically, yes, you can. You're going to run into all kinds of problems when you try to turn it on, though.
Yep, KYC. I think it costs $3 million to get a money transmitter license in California. So yes, Chris, if you have $3 million and want to deal with the logistics of doing it, you can get one. Then you have to get into Starbucks. So yes, definitely a lot of opportunities, and I think that's something to think about. Is ATMs are great ways to give access to people, whether or not your government in your specific country is allowing that, whether it is truly allowing it or it's only allowing it to people that will pay them the money that they want, is something different. But within the space of being a personal ATM, I think to finish on that note, is we are all personal ATMs for Bitcoin. If you accept fiat, you can now be a Bitcoin ATM. And that's a nice part about it.
Somebody commented 300,000 for license. That might be correct, but that doesn't include all the costs to actually comply and the other things. So I think just looking at a licensing cost for doing money transfer business is probably a very small part of the total expenditure.
And each jurisdiction that you want to operate in is going to have their own stack of licenses for you too.
Absolutely. And you have to be licensed in every state, I think, to be able to be a money transmitter. It's not just the one state that you're planning on working within, but maybe not. I could be wrong on that. I've never looked into starting up an ATM.
Well, it was a lot easier and a lot cheaper in Canada, but even still, the banks made it very difficult. Friends of mine were the ones who set up the first Bitcoin ATM. That was in Vancouver, and there was one bank that was willing to deal with us for quite a while, and they were pretty decent until one day they decided, you know what, that's enough, no more. And so they had to pick up the operation and move somewhere more friendly, so they moved to Singapore now. It's a lot better there, but every jurisdiction is different, and they can change very quickly.
Very quickly, yeah. Just like Bobby Lee says, BTC China, the regulators in China write specific rules so they can simply change them and say, that's not actually what we meant this, and sleep with one eye open, basically, and that is what most companies are having to do.
That last huge dive that happened right after the Chinese central bank had started talking about cracking down on Bitcoin, they didn't actually pass a law. Like, they didn't take any actual measures. They just started talking. It scared the crap out of everybody. So it doesn't take much.
Passing laws in China is very very different because, like Bobby says, it's not about the law. It's about how they stated the law or what they meant to say in the law, not actually what the law says. So it does create a huge amount of uncomfortable business work for people that don't actually know if what they're doing is under what they think that they're supposed to be doing or what the law actually says, or if they're going to simply say that's not the context we meant it in, you're out of you're out of alignment. So yeah, I think that governments will continue to try to stifle Bitcoin and all innovation, free markets in general. It doesn't help them to have people creating free markets on their own. But the nice thing is that 2 + 2 will always equal 4, and you can't really point a gun at an algorithm. So so yeah, do you guys have anything else you want to finish up with? It looks like we are just at an hour now, so we should probably sign off here soon.
No, that was great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Awesome,
Thanks.
guys. So it was really great chatting with you, and I hope everybody that watched enjoyed it and will join us on our next one. So this was the Exosphere, Bitcoin, and the Future of Money. Thanks, guys.